and she got to see what recovery looked like. I don't think there's ever been anything in my life that has mattered to me as much as my mom telling me she was proud of me for what I went through and where I ended up. And I think that because she saw that, she could leave this world at peace and feel like we got it from here. And so that was a huge part of my journey and a part of my recovery. Is
stories are powerful.
Welcome to the Rise, Recover, Live podcast, brought to you by The Phoenix. This is a space where people impacted by substance use can come to share their story of strength and resilience, get open and honest, and inspire hope and build community through shared experience.
We'll be talking to people in our community on their own recovery journey and shine a light on the topic of recovery in all its forms. Maybe you'll hear some of your story in theirs.
Let's show the world that together we rise, recover, and live.
Welcome to another episode of Rise, Recover, Live, the podcast. We are your hosts, Bryce III.
And Liz McKean, and we're pumped to be back.
Yes. It is our first recording of the year 2023. And because I have PTSD from New Year's because of 2020 and celebrating 2020 vision, come on, baby, this is my year. And then we all know what happened. I'm taking it easy on celebration, but I will pick your energy. Liz, how's your energy?
My energy is great. I'm in this I almost said Zoom room, but digital space with two of my favorite people on the whole planet. So great way to start the year. And I mean, similarly to how I take the kind of power away from the intensity, I guess, of the holidays, when it comes to New Year, I enjoy, thinking about like New Year and new starts. Those are fun, but I don't set actual like intentions until March 4th. That's my intention setting date for the year, because it's the only day of the year that is a command, like to March 4th. So that for a long time, that's been my jam. And yeah, so I feel like I've already started. So I'm like 3 months ahead.
Liz is dropping bars. That's the only day that you can March 4th. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so we might have to do a special episode for March 4th.
Maybe we'll get
definitely. Some
I want to pick your brain about that a little bit more. But before we get into heavy conversation, I want to introduce our guests. So I think this is a circle back around with the energy, because Caleb, Liz, and I all first met in person. What was it now? Like a year and a half ago in Vegas?
Yeah. Maybe more. Yeah.
Maybe more.
Sheesh. So
time means nothing.
This was the first time that I met Liz, and we've had Ryan on the podcast, the creator of Mobilized Recovery, and that's where we met at that conference. And we got together, and it was immediately a dream team. We all connected, we all clicked, and it's just a wonderful full circle around to have this person on that podcast with me and Liz. So I'd like to welcome my guy, Caleb Ferguson. What's up, man?
Thanks, y'all. It's good to be here. I have been watching some of the podcasts and kind of keeping up with what was going on, and just feel honored to be here. I love that I'm kicking off the first podcast of the new year and doing it with both of you. I think it's interesting that you mentioned, Liz, like taking some power away from the holidays and stuff. Like typically I roll into the new year and I feel like, oh, I've got goals. I got this thing I gotta accomplish. And it's almost like it sets me up for a low level of success, because if I accomplish it, I'm like, oh, that was the plan, or a high level of what I feel like personally is like failure. Like I didn't get there in time. And this year I kind of rolled into things with the intention of anything that I was going to set my mind to in 2023, I actually began in 2022. So it wasn't like I was waiting for this arbitrary date to kind of start chasing something that I identified as important. But then also my biggest goal was to roll into everything with like the focus on being at peace with whatever came. So instead of forcing my way, just allowing myself to be a part of whatever the universe or God has for me. And then in that thing, do the best I can with whatever's presented, which is kind of like with what came up with, my brother's situation recently. And none of it, what's been really powerful with that is I feel like in approaching things from that manner, I'm right where I'm supposed to be when I'm supposed to be there. I'm not rushing it. I'm not behind on anything. I still have to work hard on the stuff that presents itself, but I don't feel like I've got this imaginary thing I'm measuring myself against that determines whether as a person I'm successful or not. And so that's been really important for me, maintaining my own peace, like in my spirit and then like mentality. And I found that I'm a lot happier trying to do the things that I've kind of found to be important. So yeah, it's great to be here. And this is one of those things that I've been looking forward to in that whole process. So
I love
That's
that.
beautiful. My guy, Eric Thomas, he's the chief storyteller at the city of Detroit, and he does a lot of
Love
other cool
ET.
stuff here in Detroit. He put something up on LinkedIn and said, "This new year, I encourage you to remember that there ain't no shortcuts to building skills. So many gurus are going to offer you the become a pro in 30 days joint. Don't trust them. It took them years. It'll take you years too. Just get started and don't put a time limit on it. Dedicate some time to do it consistently, and you'll look back in a few years and be shocked at how far you come. Don't let an arbitrary date rule or ruin your self-esteem or optimism. You got this." And I think what you shared, like, shares a lot of, like, echoes a lot of those sentiments where it's like, sometimes that measuring stick doesn't necessarily serve us and may incapacitate us and disallow us to show up to our fullest capacity and allow compassion for ourselves in the midst of creating a life that we desire. And I also, before we get too deep, because, okay, so just,
Too late.
Yeah, it's getting deep.
I just want to, like, because this year, Liz, I want to, like, continue to have that spillover between the conversations behind the scenes and creating a show and putting the effort into the show and the actual show. So behind the scenes, Liz and I, float around a lot about how can we make the show the best? How can we take the feedback that we get and implement it? And we've come across some of our, like, personal inclinations. And my personal inclination as a person in recovery, I am, like, process focused. I am, like, what tools have you developed in recovery focus? I am like, okay, you sound like you're putting these things together. So what is your process focus? And Liz expressed that, she liked to hear some of the stories of how it was, because that is a space of relatability. Like, when I hear that you went through these things that maybe I experienced, not only does it make me relate to how you are creating tools now more, but I might be in a space where, like, I feel like I need to hear somebody say that they've been through something similar as me. And, so we're looking to continue to, like, storytell in such a way that we include all of these elements and not lean so much in, because this will be a personal development show if it's all for Bryce the Third, right? But, like, the stories are the most powerful and important thing that we can contribute to the space, I believe. So, Caleb, I know me and you, we can get deep into, like, the tools that we developed, our philosophies, and how we show up in the world today. But let's dig into your story, man. Like, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today. What was it like?
Yeah, wow. So I think I could probably take a whole podcast. I think both of you know from our interactions together, and anybody listen to this, I enjoy talking about my story, and I just enjoy talking to people overall. So, like, I could take up the whole time with just, like, start from square one to where I'm at now. I think in terms of my recovery, I'm a person that I actually never touched a drop of alcohol until I was 21. So I didn't follow that path, I think, where a lot of people can identify, where they started drinking early, which I don't know if that was good or bad, honestly. I think that I always had a stigma, because up until I was 21, I played college sports. I was a basketball player, and always tried to, and it makes a little bit more sense when it was all or nothing, right? Like, I was all in on basketball, so I was in nothing of the things that could detract from that, right? Then basketball went away, and then, well, now what am I going to do, right? So I kind of made that shift. I was really a social drinker up until the time that I wasn't, and I can't really draw back to anything that I would say was like, this was a traumatic experience that I had in my life that triggered that. I went through a pretty painful divorce early in my 20s. Never picked up alcohol from that. Went through a couple different experiences in my life, never really picked up from there. What I found, though, and what has really been powerful for me for the Phoenix, is when I started drinking was when I actually became a little bit more isolated in my personal life. So I moved from Florida to Nashville, went to school there at a pretty conservative university, played basketball there, finished school, went to grad school, everything was going well. I was a personal trainer at the time. And so when I first started training, I had, your typical clientele of, like, a school teacher here and maybe a businessman here. And so I had a lot of these different connections in my community where it would be people that, unless you're in that field, you're probably never going to encounter a school teacher who also teaches equestrian special needs, an attorney who does injury law, and then this guy over here that owns a masonry business. So I had all these connections in my community, and I really thrived off that. That was where I was happiest, when I knew a lot of people who, I had great relationships with, but at the same time, it wasn't just one funnel. And then at a point, I had an opportunity to kind of start training within the country music industry in Nashville. And so what happened there was I went from training anywhere from 30 to 40 clients and having this diverse group of people I could interact with and have a variety of ideas from conservative to liberal to whatever that looks like, to really training. I would do 40 hours a week training all these folks. I went to like 30 hours a month training in this industry where I made more money, but had less connection. So I was fulfilling something on the financial side. And I was like, that's the dream. That's the goal. But then I realized I'm only training like 2 or 3 people. I have all this downtime. So I'm lonely. They're out of town for something. So I'm not working. It's like, what do I fill my void with? And it started off with, let's have a drink while I go to the pool. Like, I got nothing to do today. And then it was like, oh, in order for cooking to be as fun, I need to have a drink. And then, oh, I kind of have a headache. Maybe if I have a drink, it goes away. And then it just materialized into this. And I can't say for certain because I'm not a scientist and all that, but I remember the day that I think that my alcoholism clicked. I was in Knoxville at a University of Tennessee football game, was staying the night with some friends, and we had gone out drinking the night before. And in typical college football fashion, it was a late night, lots of drinks. You start early, you finish late. And I woke up and I had the worst hangover. And a buddy of mine goes, hey, have a shot, it'll go away. And I remember taking that shot, and it was whiskey. And I went, oh, this is perfect. And I think from that day, and if I'm being honest, I think from that day for another year and a half, there was not one morning that I woke up, whether I was working, whether I was going to church, whatever I was doing, in order to not shake when I talked to someone, that I didn't have a shot of whiskey in the morning. So I went all from one to the other. Kind of tracked through that. Was still going to the gym. I would drink in the morning and go train clients. Like, our typical, what we deem as highly functional. I think everybody else noticed, but I was like, I'm still being successful. Of course, over time, lost all those things that I had built up and the reputation that I had tried to establish. And got to the point where one night I was on the phone with my parents and just, our normal check-in. And for whatever reason, I think I was drunk enough at the time. We hit that window where we're like, we're going to be honest and we're going to be genuine because we're inebriated enough. And I remember saying to my mom, who was on the phone on speakerphone with my dad, and I said, I think I have a problem. And she was like, and it was kind of the soft entry point into it. I said, I think I have a problem. I think I'm drinking too much. And she started asking questions. And I just remember the floodgates opening. And I remember being like, if I don't stop, I think I'm going to die. And I said, Mom, I think I need you to come get me. I think I need to leave here. And at that point, looking back at it, I had lost all of my employment opportunities. I was living in an apartment. I had a girlfriend at the time who had moved in and moved out immediately because she realized what shape I was in. So I'm living in this 1-bedroom apartment. I have no couch. I have no bed. I have nothing. I'm sleeping on the floor. And none of it clicked while I was in the middle of it. And so my dad flew up to Nashville to get me. And we've talked about it since, but he was like, it was terrifying. So currently I weigh about 195 pounds. I think I weighed 155 pounds when he showed up. The only thing that got me through the week before he got there was I had a best friend who would show up and force feed me McDonald's chicken sandwiches because it was like, I just wasn't eating. I was at that pit.
Yeah.
So thankfully my dad came up. We went through kind of the detox withdrawal cycle for, about a week. And then we made the trip back to Tampa. Did not stay sober once I got here. I made it for about a month like most of us do. And
you were cured.
I was like, this is great. And I was actually doing well. Got a job on Harbor Island training at the athletic club there and was doing really well, actually. Found similar to what I had in Nashville, I found the opportunity to establish these connections and I was really happy. And then New Year's Eve came around and was getting ready to go to a New Year's Eve party. And a buddy was like, hey, we should do a drink before we leave. And I was like, in my mind, I'm like, no, that's not what we want. Of course I did. And that kind of started this process back and forth. From there, went to detox a couple different times, experienced the medical detox, which for me was pretty, it wasn't as bad as the first time I detoxed. I think, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when you detoxed the first time and when your dad came and got you, like, did you go to a facility then, or was that just the two of you?
Just the two of us.
That's scary. That can be dangerous.
It was probably the worst experience I've ever had in my life. And I think he would vouch for it too. I I went through the whole gambit of seeing things, hearing things, vomiting. Looking back at it, when I went to the medical detox place, they were like, you absolutely could have died in that situation.
Yeah.
I think at that point that he came up, I had been on a steady drinking binge for at least a month, and not like a couple beers, but like a bottle of whiskey a day. So my body really was going through it. And I think that, thinking back on it, kind of being honest with myself, obviously I wasn't ready to quit drinking, right? Like when we're ready to quit, that's our opportunity. But I was very, very traumatized by that first detox experience. And so I always feared what that would feel like. So the medical detox was awesome because I could sit, they'd give me Valium. And it was like, oh, this is a softer way for me to go through this. And so I went through that over and over. I went to medical detox, I think 4 times. Each time I stayed sober for like 2 weeks, had a variety of experiences where, a police officer would wake me up and I was asleep in my car in a Publix parking lot because I went to the liquor store. A lot of things like that, things I can remember, and honestly, some stuff I can't. There's some blank spots in my memory. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but sometimes they pop back up. And thankfully, I'm in a place now 8 years later that I can process. Towards the end, I went to my parents and I said, because I was living with them at the time, and I said, I think I really want to get better. I just don't know that I can. I said, so if I can have this opportunity to get sober one more time, if I can't do it, then I need you to court order me to treatment. Like we have to do this. And thankfully there was a wonderful man that my parents knew from church named Tom Sled. And he's a beacon in the AA community in Tampa. So many folks know Tom. He passed away some years back, but he took me to Village Inn and we got apple pie and we went to the Salvation Army to a meeting and kind of checked that out. And I said, you know what, Tom, I just don't think this is for me. I think I can do it by myself. And of course, in his wisdom, he was like, okay, we'll see. And of course I didn't. So at that point, my parents went through the process of legally Marchman acting me, which is a court order to an involuntary order to treatment, which I knew Florida. I needed. Yeah, I needed. And so at that point, it was like, all right, here we go. We're going to do this. So I went to detox. At that time, I knew like the last few times had just been too easy. So I actually asked the staff there, I said, if at all possible, please do not give me any medication. I need to set my mind to this. And I need to be safe, but I need to go through this. And so I got through it without any of the medications other than like blood pressure medication, because obviously those are some medical conditions that could lead to severe consequences.
Seizure and everything.
Yeah. And so my blood pressure was way through the roof. I think I blew a 0.18 when I went into treatment. And so when I went to detox, I did that and I got through that process and I came out, and on the way home from that detox, my dad was driving me and, we have a good relationship. And so something was off, something was different in the ride. And I was like, hey, what's up? I'm still kind of shaky. I'm still kind of going through it because it's only been 72 hours. And it was on that ride home that he informed me that my mom, who had pulled her back getting something out of our van, had gone in to get it looked at and get some things done. And in one of the scans, they had found that she had lung cancer. And she was stage 3 or 4 at the time. And so, of course, in my emotional state, there was no way I could process that. So that led, and I clearly, like, we can always blame it on something, right? Like, oh, that was the thing that made me drink. I was probably going to drink either way, but in that moment, that was really what I couldn't process. That I was a mama's boy my whole life. She passed away about coming up on 6 years now or so, and what I was told was that she essentially had 6 months to live. The problem was I knew I was court ordered for 6 months of treatment. So at that moment, I had to decide: am I going to run? Am I not going to go to treatment and try to do this, or am I going to go to treatment so that my mom can know that I'm going to be okay? Took a lot of soul searching and a lot of things to kind of walk through personally, but I ended up committing to go. And I remember when the Salvation Army had a bed open, I was actually going to IOP, outpatient treatment, and I got a phone call and I stepped out and my mom said, hey, I want to talk to you about something. It sounds like there's an opportunity for you to go, but I'm scared to tell you because I'm afraid you're going to run, like take off. And I was like, so I sat there and that's what I had done before. So it made total sense. And so she sat there and we talked a little bit and I said, you know what, I'm going to go do it. I'm going to commit. And I said, because at least if I'm there, you can focus on you. And so that's, and I know we say, you can't get sober for somebody else and all these things, but in that moment, giving my mom the peace of mind, even if everything didn't work out for me. I wanted her to be able to concentrate on her own health and well-being and what she would need to go through. So I was locked in. So at the Salvation Army, you're not allowed to have visitors for 30 days. And it was in the 2 weeks before I went into treatment, I actually met my wife. And so we started dating. And this is a great story. So at the Salvation Army, they're very strict, very religious program. And so they have these rules, and it's like if you break a rule in your 30 days, you get your lockdown extended a week, right?
Wow.
Like all this stuff. So I'm able to write letters to my girlfriend at the time, my wife now. Wrote her a letter, and I was like, oh, church is on Sundays and Wednesdays and all this stuff. And so Wednesday comes around, and I'm sitting at the front row because I'm new. I'm in the front row. I'm next to the leadership for the Salvation Army, so like the majors and like the people in the button down shirts with the pins on the shoulders, and I'm sitting there and I feel this energy and everybody's kind of turning. It's 150 guys at the Salvation Army. Everybody's kind of turning. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I look, here comes my wife walking down the aisle. And she was like, I'm coming to church with you. Like,
Oh
I'm
my
here.
God.
She says that I told her she was allowed to come. She'll watch this and she'll go, you did say that. I never told her she could show up. But it was such a testament to who my wife is as a person, as a supporter. She came and she sat with me for that whole hour of church service and was there for me the entire time. Of course, I got locked
And you
down
had just met her.
I had met her. Yeah. So at that time, I think we probably were dating for like a month, but
Wow.
full transparency, I knew within like a week that she was the one. Like Liz, you've met Carolina. She's a wonderful person. Bryce, I think you met her at the Rise too,
I may
possibly.
have. I may have.
So, but just phenomenal human being and just absolute
She's
joy.
really special.
I'm so blessed for her to be in my life that I can't even express it like in words, but she parked it right there and she was like, I'm in. Through that time, made it 6 months, was able to, after a month, you can leave. So I was able to visit my mom and go with her to her treatments, and just seeing the weight that it took off of her to have me there, that is something that I'll never forget. Like, it's just so precious to me to know that, even at my worst, I was still able to make a decision. It was made for me. Don't get me wrong. Like I was going, like, either you go there or you go to jail. Like, it's not really that much of a choice, but I was able to say, I want to do this right now and go. To see that weight lifted off of her, that's been something for me with the Phoenix that has been so huge. Like, as a person in recovery, of course I have a heart for those in recovery, but to see supporters come to our events and see what recovery looks like and see that it's not always the negatives, there's the positive side, and get to actually live that. Like, it's just, my heart is so full every time I see that. And it's really cool. So while I'm at the center, my mom comes to Al-Anon meetings. I get to go spend time. I actually got released from the center on Christmas Eve.
Oh,
So that was my
wow.
last day. So I got to spend Christmas with my mom. Thankfully, she got 4.5 years from a 6-month diagnosis. So we got to spend some amazing time. And as we were kind of getting towards the tail end, her lung cancer kind of took a turn and kind of shifted towards leukemia. It was a one-off version of leukemia. So there really wasn't a lot she could do. In that 4 years, we got to this point. It was so amazing in our family relationship and dynamic that it was about 5 to 6 days before she passed. We went out to dinner, or like lunch, late lunch, early dinner with my family. We went to Outback Steakhouse, and we're sitting there and we're all talking. And I just remember having this moment looking back at it where, it's my dad, me, my identical twin brother, and my mom. My twin brother is, he's blind and has cerebral palsy. So he's got some special needs considerations. And my mom was just sitting there paying attention to how the three of us were interacting. And there was something that had happened. My dad and my brother were kind of bickering because they live in the same house and it's two guys. And I was able to kind of be the intermediary to kind of like work that. And I watched her just kind of relax. And looking back at it, it was that moment that she was like, oh, my guys are going to be okay. Like, they can take care of each other. The next Monday is when she passed. And Sunday, she went to church. She was hugging people. She was saying hello. And we usually spent Mondays together, and she was not feeling well. So she's like, I don't know if I can go tomorrow. Monday night, she actually passed away.
Wow.
And I just remember being so grateful that it wasn't this long, lengthy, painful process. Now, she went through a ton of things. There was a lot of hurt and a lot of aches, and she needed medication, but She didn't spend months in the hospital before she passed. She literally went to
She was
church on
still
Sunday.
her. Like she
Oh
was still
yeah.
herself that during that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a
Yeah.
such a gift.
Well, and she, she loved Salvador Dali, the artist. And those are the pictures on my wall behind me, the melting clocks and all the different things. Like, so I have all these things that are, remind me of her. But I mean, up until the day she on Monday, she was unconscious and it was kind of life support. And then she passed. But I mean, Sunday night, we're on the phone talking. And, it was very much up until she was living until she passed. She didn't fade away. And it was super hard and really difficult for us to deal with as a family because she was that matriarch. She, if I live my life correctly, every person that I love will know how she was. That's my hope. She was that kind of person, just kind beyond imagination. I got to do the eulogy at her service, and I looked up, and I don't remember anything I said, to be truthful. Like, I remember having things I wanted to cover, but it was such a wall of emotion. But I do remember looking up, and I saw people from my middle school and high school days, kids that I went to school with who have their own families now, were in that service. I had no idea they even knew she passed. Her doctor, her oncologist, all these people came to her service. We were at a church, and I want to say there was 250 plus people in this room, and people I hadn't seen in years. And they just knew my mom and they loved her and they wanted to be there for our family. And so, my journey kind of covered all of that. And it was all the different emotions I think we all experience in recovery. But I think the one thing that I'm grateful for is that I made that decision when it was the hardest. Because in my mind at the moment, I'm committing to 6 months, I'll never see my mom again. But because I did that, I got 4.5 years with her. And she got to see what recovery looked like. She got to see, I don't think there's ever been anything in my life that has mattered to me as much as my mom telling me she was proud of me for what I went through and where I ended up. And I think that because she saw that, she could leave this world at peace and feel like, like we got it from here. And so that was a huge part of my journey and a part of my recovery, is getting to the place where the people that love me can be at peace because they know I'm going to be okay. And I think that I had that for a long time because I was putting on this artificial, like, I'm good, y'all. Like, everything's fine. Like, I'm good at everything. I'm, my job is good. Like, I'm not worried about it. You don't have to worry about me. And now I'm at the point, and I don't get it perfect all the time, but now I'm at the point where I am actually good, even when things aren't good. And I'll be honest with you, and I'll be transparent. And if I can, I don't have to share everything, but I will share the things that, if you're a person in my life that asks. And I think her seeing that difference gave her the peace to know that, like I said, like when we were at lunch, she was like, my guys are going to be okay. They'll take care of each other. And, that's kind of come to full fruition. Like, my brother lives with me now because I'm his legal guardian and we're taking care of him. Then I found the Phoenix, right? Like, and for the longest time in my recovery, I'm over here as this fitness professional. I've got this, like, you should pay me money because I know things that you don't. But then I'm in recovery and I'm like, I need to ask people how to live my life because my life was unmanageable. And I never was able to align those two things. They always had to be separate because there's no way I can be the expert and then also be the person that doesn't know what the heck's going on 90% of the time.
Yeah, and then you don't feel like you're in integrity in either of those places because you're just not your full self.
I was never my full self. And it was always, I'll go to a meeting, but I hope a client doesn't show up.
Right.
And it was always these things where I'm like, and of course, then I'm like, oh, well, now I'm keeping secrets. This isn't good. So, and then I'm really not good at either of them. And I remember seeing Scott Schroed's TED Talk and kind of being like, man, like that sounds like, you mean I can do this stuff and be myself? And like, I'm not good today. Like, I don't have to be the leader of the class. I can be part of the community that just happens to do it. And I remember having this thought of like, every time I've done anything that's of service, it's like, let's say Habitat for Humanity. It was like, I'm serving needy people because I'm not needy. Right. And I had this thought where it was like, for the Phoenix, it's like, I am a needy person, but I have a hammer. So I'm going to go help build this house.
Yeah.
And like, that process for me was totally different because then I could show up and go, when somebody's like, how you doing today? I don't have to put on this front because you paid me or whatever. It's like, you know what? I don't think I'm doing that great, but I'm here and this is making everything better. And we don't have to be perfect. And so when I came to work for the Phoenix and started participating, like, just slowly those two pieces of my life blended together. And then like what used to be contention between the two became like more fulfillment from both than I could have ever expected. And then I got to meet amazing people like you two, and then I end up getting to talk about all of it on a podcast. So yeah, so
And here we are
way to
today.
bring it full circle.
That was well done.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's a lot of important things in your story, just inherently. One of the things that I do want to pull out is the tendency to like want to paint our experience with like black and white. So that hard and fast rule that, oh, you can't recover for somebody else, you got to recover for yourself.
right.
And you can only do it for yourself. You can't do it for anything. And I've said this, and I think the more I'm hearing people's stories, the more I'm looking at my story through the lens of my experience throughout long-term recovery. It's like, yeah, when I got to the treatment center and I talked to the RN, and he asked me what I was there for, and I told him I got kids, and he told me you can't do it for your kids, you got to do it for you. That struck me, and it really propelled me to focus on self. But also, if it wasn't for the kids, I probably wouldn't have been in that treatment center. Like
Yeah.
if it was just for me, I probably would have struggled a lot longer versus like seeing a disappointment in my kid's face to let me know like, oh, you need me to show up in a capacity which I don't have. I don't possess that capacity. And that feeling like, oh, doing this is being able to show up for something bigger than myself. It played a huge role in me being able to ask for that help and me being super urgent about like figuring out how to get it. And I hear a lot of that in your story where it's like, there was this choice that you had to make, and it's poetic in the way that, okay, I thought I was sacrificing, these last 6 months, and then I ended up getting 4 years, but in making that decision, like, let me do this for somebody outside of me to have peace. Let me do this for somebody outside of me to be able to focus on them, like a selfless act. And around here, we call that selfish selflessness. Because like how you talked about the Habitat for Humanity joint, where it's like, okay, I'm not needy, so I go to help needy people. When I give $1 to a person on a corner, like I give $1 to a person on a corner because I need to. Like when I walk somebody, my recovery pathway is 12 step. My original recovery pathway is 12 steps. So when I walk somebody through the steps, I don't do it because I do it because I need to do it. Like I have to show up and do it. And if there is a even exchange, I'm as needy as the person that I'm helping, and it's just, I don't know. I think it's very poetic and very beautiful. Going back to how and this is kind of switching topics a little bit too.
I'm just basically going to agree exactly with what you said. And just not only is that, almost even exchange, it's really just it's a redefinition of love. I think when we talk about like doing something, like getting better for somebody else, we're kind of assuming that it is I don't know, I guess kind of transactional. Whereas, I think in my heart, like love is not like, and your piece is my piece. Like, just like exactly what you're saying with giving that $1. And like, when you wanted your mom's piece, it was that was also for your piece, and that's, it almost reminds me of, I don't know if this is actually the best comparison, but I'm just going to say it because it's popping in my head, and here we are. Makes me think of like when folks say like, money doesn't buy happiness. And I'm like, well, that's a real shitty thing to say to somebody that doesn't have any money and doesn't have any opportunity to do anything that's ever going to make them happy because they can't even get a roof over their head, and like both things can be true, like, yes, you need more than just that one thing. Like, yes, there needs to be, work and some self-worth involved with the fact that there's this other person that you're doing this for, but also that there has to be that thing that pushes you forward. There has to be, I mean, that's even self-worth, just to love somebody that much, to be part of that love is something that you are doing for you and for that love and for that person and for the better of the whole wide world, because you have something to offer. Like, that's just, it's a spark, and no matter what originally kind of like lights it, like fanning it, that's the next step, and doesn't matter what actually sparks it.
Well, I think too, like to kind of speak to that a little bit deeper as well, like something I recognized early on was like I needed these connections, multiple connections with a variety of people. I think in recovery, for me at least, there are days where that one spark doesn't do it.
Yeah.
So like there are days where for me is not enough. like, I'm just like, maybe I wake up and I feel like I don't deserve to be at peace. But if I'm
Yeah.
giving it to someone else that day, maybe that's the thing that helps. And then if on another
Yeah.
day where maybe, it's very similar, like, they say don't do it for someone else because what if they're not in your life anymore, right? Well, at a point my mom passed away. Well, now I can no longer give her that peace, right? But if I am being true to myself, I found other avenues, whether it's for my relationships I've had or this thing I'm striving for. Like all these things on different days have different values in the moment. And if I can build a diverse set of those things, I'm no longer dependent on any one to,
Mm.
they say, keep you sober. I think that they all enhance my recovery, which is different than sobriety. And so, like, as I'm layering those pieces in, it's like when one isn't doing the trick, I've got all these other people in my life. I've got relationships. I've got things that I look forward to. And all of those can be the piece, the kind of like kaleidoscope of things. So it's not
I
just
love
that
that.
one person, right? Like, it's not like, you got a girlfriend, I'm getting sober so our relationship works and then we break up. Well, now what? It's
Yeah.
more like, it's that, like you said, Liz, like that love for someone that your piece is my piece. And that can be sufficient at times. But for me, if I found other areas with like my wife or my brother or my work that I get to do or the things that I wake up excited to do because, like I get to do this. Like, 8 years ago, I'm sleeping on the library of the Salvation Army because they didn't even have a bed for me, but I was so intent on getting in. I would have never dreamed that I'd be talking to you two about my journey and that might be valuable to someone else. So, like today, that can be the thing. And like, as long as we get that kind of tapestry of stuff, I think that we never become so dependent on one thing that our recovery hinges on that. And so if that thing falls through, I got other things in my life that I can be in recovery for.
And now,
So
and now we're
Love
speaking
that.
on Bryce's favorite thing, the process, baby. And this is what recovery in action looks like. Being able to show up for life on life's terms is the number one promise that was delivered from this way of life. Because now, no matter what it is I experience, I can use that experience to cultivate wisdom. No matter how tough it may be, I can continue to show up. And in the midst of showing up, I can cultivate tools that allow me to, one, add meaning and tell the story to myself that allows for me to see the substantial nature of what it is that I may be experiencing. And two, use it in a way that allows me to show up, which also allows me to show up for others. And it's like this continuous process to where almost, at this point in my recovery, I've had to reframe, like, I count chits, so you get years and then, you get to a certain amount. It's like, yo, like I can kick my feet up. Like I got, X amount of years. And it's like, no, like the most important work we'll do is today because we'll have experience today that we have never had. If we continue to push ourselves, even if we don't continue to push ourselves, life has a way of bringing stuff to our doorstep that we've never experienced. And in that moment, what do you hinge upon? Because maybe I can't hold on to the fact that I was doing this for my mom. I can't hold on to the fact that I was doing this for my kids. I can't hold on to my fact that I was doing this for my girlfriend. I can't hold on to the fact I was doing this for my job. I was doing this for me personally, So it's like learning to continuously show up is the game of pivoting in such a way that continues to build strength and the ability to show up some more.
Yeah, and I love the processes. Like, I mean, with work with my regular, and I also love the fact, Bryce, that you mentioned Eric Thomas because actually his first book I had with me in the Salvation Army, and I was reading that book, The Secret to Success. I watch those videos all the time, and like some of the things I think where I'm at now, which I love. I don't know if you've heard his story of the lion and the gazelle.
Tell me.
So he talks about, and I'll probably butcher it. So if you hear me mess it up and it's going to be bad, fix it. Don't let me mess it up too bad. But essentially, the way it goes is that every day in Africa, a lion and a gazelle both wake up, and every single day they both have to start running. The difference is that the gazelle is running from something, and the lion's running to something. So when the gazelle wakes up, he's running because the lion's going to chase him. And the thing is that if the lion stops chasing him, the gazelle stops running, right? So the day that I always felt like I was running from my addiction. Like if I don't do these things, I'm going to go back to it. There was a point in my recovery where you shifted. So like, and it's life or death for both, right? Like if the gazelle doesn't run, he's going to get eaten. But if the lion doesn't run, he's going to starve, right? And so one of my favorite things that Eric Thomas says in that speech is he was like, you have to be faster than the fastest lion. He's like, no, actually, you just got to be faster than the slowest gazelle if you're in a group. Like maybe you could just get away. But like, but for recovery purposes, the idea is that when the sun gets up, both parties have to run. The difference is that the gazelle's running from something, and the lion, though, is chasing something to survive as well. But the difference is when he catches the gazelle, he brings it back for his family. So the running is the same, and everybody's motivated by different things. But for me in early recovery, I was running because I was trying to get away from my addiction. So I did things so I wouldn't drink. I did things so that I could stay sober. Now I'm doing things because in my sobriety, I'm able to provide a better life for myself and the people I love. And so that story's always stuck with me because it's like, no, it's true. Like you can't just be like, I think the way he phrases, he's like, I'm a lion. So like, just stop there and let me catch you. Like, that's not how it works.
Right.
You still got to run with intensity to catch that thing you're pursuing. But the difference is instead of running from fear, now you're running for a motive and for something to feed your family and provide for those you love. Did I butcher that, Bryce?
No. So I don't know the exact story,
Okay.
but you definitely conveyed the energy. And I think even to add another layer of depth to it, it's like in my active addiction, I was extending a lot of energy. So I was still, proverbially, quote unquote, running. I was still running. There was still energy expulsion. I was still, I had to cultivate masks so that when I showed up in this room, you would know that I am like this. And then when I showed up in this room, you would know that I was like this. And I had to keep up with the lies, keep up with the masks. I had to, finesse money. I had to finesse lying. Like there was still energy that went into like being an active addiction, right?
So much energy.
But the difference between that energy and this energy is like this energy is allowing for me to show up in a way that like positively adds to life and the lives of those around me. And so it's like, if I'm going to be expending energy, then I might as well expend energy towards this thing that's going to actually like be substantial versus this thing where it's like tomorrow, none of this is going to matter because I'm going to need to do it all over again.
Yeah. The gazelles, they're like built to run and they run and it's like joyful to even see them run. And also them running allows them to go back to their family at the end of the night. Like I think whether you're the lion or the gazelle, because I still feel like there's things that I'm running from, but I'm doing it like with confidence and with joy. Like I'm built for this. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to run from certain, and not even from like it's chase me, it's going to get me, like I'm afraid. More just like there's so much more joy over there. There's just so much more. That's where the green grass is. Like this is, and also running feels really good. And I'm like built for this. That energy, like where, like why is that energy happening? Like I'm expending that energy and it's for such a beautiful reason. It's because I'm made for this and what's on the other side of it is just so worth it.
And to also take it deeper, you got to think about the zebras, right? No, I'm playing.
Listen, the zebras are where
What about the groundhogs? Meanwhile, both of my brother and sister are like biologists and like are going to be like, you got all those animals wrong. Like everything we talked about.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But I think too, like, to me, the difference between running from fear, because I identify, and that's another layer to it too, I think is really cool, like in recovery, right? Like Liz, you identify with those two animals that we're talking about with two different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bryce identify, and but it's at the same time, we can all find something in that metaphor that relates. And I think that's the beauty of recovery. And I think for like with the Phoenix, how we approach all pathways, like this community is full of people that everybody can identify with something in a different way. And I go back to that diversity of like the connections that fueled me personally. That's part of what I think with the Phoenix movement that is so deep is that no matter what this year, for me, this past year in 2022, CrossFit and all these things were like, that's where my passion is and the people that get to do that. But I also discovered that I really like these photography hikes that we do and like taking photos of nature and stuff. And it's like, oh, like that's something new. But like, it was another depth to my recovery that I didn't even know. My wife will give me a hard time, but like I even went and bought a new iPhone so that way I could take better pictures on the next hike. Like I was just in it.
Awesome.
And I think when you look at like a diverse community like we have at the Phoenix, it adds those layers to where the way you view something is different than how I view it. But now I'm going to walk away from this conversation looking at that metaphor a completely different way because I'm with a group of people that have different experiences and can bring something different to the table. And so like that's just I had to bring it back to the Phoenix community because it's just so wonderful the different folks we get to interact with. And I can honestly say that since I've been with the Phoenix and met the people, whether it's through the virtual classes I've done or in person or my coworkers on like the staff side, like I did not know that recovery could be this rich and fulfilling and peaceful and crazy and maddening and just overall like life changingly awesome. Like
that it's life.
yeah,
That it's not an ending, it's a beginning.
yeah.
It's advertised like, historically sobriety's got a terrible PR, it's just like you no longer get to, experience fun. You now are sentenced to just, having to just be fighting against this thing, running away from this thing for the rest of your life. Now, depending on what happened during addiction, you've got a record, you've got, all these things that it's just like, this is, this is it. And I have to succumb to it. I have to surrender because it's like, otherwise I'll die. But, it's just this kind of like gloomy thing ahead of me. And then you get there and it's like, oh my God, the sun is shining. Like, and there's all these people here ready to hug me. And I actually can feel really proud of this. And the thing that I went through allows me to, experience this kaleidoscope, like you said before. It's like a freaking miracle every day. And then there's rainy days too, and that's okay.
Yeah, and if you think about it too, like thinking back to Caleb when you had that headache and you took that shot, and it's like, oh, this made the headache go away. Like naturally, like, how could we blame anybody that's like, oh, this works? We do what works, and I can still find that habitual nature in how I show up now. I'm a bit more intentional about it, but like, okay, when I drink this amount of caffeine at this time, like I get a little excited in the morning, so I'm ready to go, And so I want to kind of break the fourth wall a little bit because this is another conversation that Liz and I have like behind the scenes where it's like, some of you might not even know what the Phoenix is. Some of you might just be listening to podcasts. Some of you might be sober curious. Some of you might be in recovery. And we could tend to talk about the Phoenix here like it's something that, one, that you already know what it is. And two, we don't want it to come off as a commercial. And I do want to story tell a bit about like when me, Caleb, and Liz was in Vegas at Mobilized Recovery the first time we met in person. I got a lot of stuff that I do personally as Bryce the Third, and I had posted something, and Liz had kind of called me on it because at that point I think I had been with the Phoenix maybe like 6-7 months or coming up on a year or something
if
like that. Yeah.
Was it even that long?
Yeah, I don't think it was that long.
I'm not the best chronologically.
Time
is
hard.
Time is a construct. But Liz had like called me because I made this post about like, I'm in Vegas and, I'm speaking on this panel and, this and that, but there was no mention of the Phoenix. And Liz was like, I'm just kind of curious as to like why you don't mention the Phoenix in any of your social media stuff. And to be honest, at that point, like I was still looking for like, where's the weird shit at? You know what I'm saying? Like I'm here, I'm on staff, but also like, I don't necessarily co-sign this all the way yet because I don't know everything about it. But I think
because you came in as a staff person as opposed to like some of like Caleb and I came in as like, this is part of our recovery. So yeah, we had a whole different
but entry. I think like now it's so funny how we can tend to talk about the Phoenix like it's just inherently this thing because I've had this experience where it's become a part of my life. And just like that shot worked for Caleb, like the Phoenix has worked for me, and I've seen the Phoenix work for so many people, in that there's community, there's conversation, there's laughter, there's activity, there's, personalized activity like nature walks or like, cultural throughout the country and internationally where it's like in Detroit, we do open mics, but, in Denver, we do hikes and camping trip. Like I've been exposed and experienced so much of it. We could tend to talk about it like, oh, this is a matter of fact, this is just a thing that goes on. But I want to break the fourth wall and let you all know, like, this is not a Phoenix commercial. I'm just a person in recovery. We're all people in recovery that this thing has worked for, and I think that's why we talk about it so like matter of factly, and we all show up and everybody has Phoenix merch on if you're watching this on YouTube, and we didn't mean to coordinate. It's just kind of like I really rock with this thing. And so here goes a resource of many resources that are here now for us to take advantage of and use, just like we use that shot to get rid of that headache.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think you're right too, Bryce. Like it's, and maybe that speaks to how organic and powerful the Phoenix movement is that we're able to talk about it just like it's this thing, right? Like we're not coming in and trying to get people to buy a membership, or we're not doing anything like that. It's literally just a part of who we are now, because we've allowed ourselves to be kind of ingrained in like that community. And I go back to like why I used to drink, and there's always a variety of reasons, but like that isolation, right? Like being by yourself was more fun if you were not sober. And so now, instead of me being isolated, even if I'm home, like I work from home. So there's days where I'm just like, this computer interaction is like what I get, but that feeds my soul to be able to be, go see. I get to go to a shout out to Brent, is one of our volunteers in Tampa. He came to a Phoenix class when I was coaching, what seems like forever ago, but it's probably about a year ago. It was his first Phoenix workout. Came, he was like, I don't do CrossFit. I got to coach him. He became a volunteer. And then I got to go to his class, his first class he coached. He got certified as a CrossFit coach and then got to lead a class. And like that kind of stuff is just, it's beautiful because I get to be a part of it. But what's amazing with the Phoenix is that would have happened without me, because the community is what drives that. I'm nothing special myself. I know people would say I'm special. I don't know how they necessarily use that term.
You're special, Caleb.
See, but that tone of voice, I don't know how you mean it. But the thing is that I get to be special because I'm part of this community, right? And that organic draw that people have, where I've walked into meetings, and nothing against any 12-step meetings or any other form of recovery, but I think no matter what the pathway is, we've all walked into a group of people that were like, oh, this isn't my vibe. And you could have the same meeting on a different day and you're like, I love this place. And other times it's just the energy is different. I can say that, like, when I used to walk into some meetings, I would leave that meeting feeling less than I did when I walked in. Not personally, but I would feel like it drained my battery a little bit. And then, but when I go to Phoenix stuff, like, I might be physically exhausted, especially if Brittany's coaching a CrossFit class. But I always feel like my battery's been charged because of the people I've got to see. And we may never even talk about recovery. It just may be a genuine, like, sometimes we'll dive into this, like, how's your sobriety going? Sometimes we won't. Sometimes we'll go like, life is happening, I need help. But a lot of times it's just like, I'm glad you're here. And we're going to spend time together, and we're going to be here with each other in community, and then we're going to go our separate ways. But you always know that you could reach out to that person no matter what's happening. And you have this tribe of people that you get to be a part of. For me, has fed my soul for the last 3 years that I've been able to be here.
Yes, so much yes. And also, I think one of the things that feeds my soul about it is that so often in life, I mean, it's that black and white thinking that you were talking about earlier, Bryce, where it's like, so often we think we have to like pick the one thing, like, we're really into like labels. And I think the beautiful thing about recovery period is you can be part of the Phoenix community and the recovery community and the 12-step community and the yoga community and the CrossFit community. You can be like, and that can be intermingling, and different things take different kind of amounts of your energy depending on what feels right in the day. Like, it's like that freedom to, choose your own adventure. That's what I love about this community, is that I don't feel like it ever has to be my everything or my only. There's like an encouragement that just inherently, just because we all, are just each other's biggest fans as just, friends, that it's like, go find what works for you. Here you got, folks that are your biggest fans. And I've seen people that have come to events with the Phoenix or downloaded the app and been like, you know what, this isn't really my jam, and gone on and find other things. But just like to know that there's lots of spaces, that there's lots of welcoming, like open armed people in this world that sometimes can feel a little bit scary and cold when we do isolate ourselves, that it's like, yes, and like all the places you belong in, all the places, and it's okay for that to shift throughout your life. And that's part of this community, and it happens outside of this community. And that's the cool thing about life.
Yeah, the cool thing about life is the name of this podcast episode.
Yeah.
But I like that.
But yeah, I definitely have enjoyed this conversation with you, Caleb, and I wouldn't want to be on a public forum in discussion with any other two people And you too.
Aw.
This has been I think it's going to be a huge contribution. People are going to hear this episode and really pull things out of it. And another episode in which, when we get off the call, I'm going to call my mom and say, hey, not that I don't talk to her every day. I talk to her every day. But I'm encouraged to call her when we get off of this call. So for the wrap up, we do have one last question for you, Caleb, and I'm going to turn it over to Liz to ask that question.
Boy, oh boy, you sure are. So Caleb, you've probably heard this question before because it's our end of episode question. And there's so many things that you said, like so many folks do on this podcast, that I feel like already answer it. But if you were to think about what you might say to a previous version of yourself, knowing that that previous version is probably in somebody who's listening right now, doesn't have to be advice, doesn't have to be anything, that except for what feels right for you, what would you say?
Looking back, I think there's so many different versions of me as I've gone through this journey. But I think if I was to look at myself at that worst moment when I was struggling and felt like I didn't know where to turn, I think I'd just keep it simple and just say, you don't have to be perfect at this, but you're worth trying. Like there's no black and white answer. It's no yes or no, but the only thing you can do is try, and you're worth that effort because you put effort into everyone else and everything else, and you've put enough effort into trying to not stay sober. So give this a shot and see where it lands, because you might surprise yourself and find a path in life that you never expected to be yours, but you might treasure it more than anything you ever had before.
I love that. You are worth trying.
Wise words.
You are worth trying.
Wise words.
Yeah, that's really good.
Also,
I feel like that could be like if you're making dinner tonight, like it might not be perfect, but you are worth trying. You go cook that
it works
new
for
meal.
so many things. And
I know.
Will you do me a favor, Liz? Will you text my wife and let her know that when I cook dinner tonight, so that way she comes home and she's not mad?
I am not gonna mess with Carolina. Actually, if she's mad, then she's just gonna be mad, and that's all right. I respect and support her in however she wants to feel.
And today in my recovery, I can accept that.
Yeah.
I also can call some takeout and make sure that that's all good too.
There you go. I have a backup. That's good. That's wise words too. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on, Caleb, and for having this conversation. This has been a really fun reunion. It's always fun to see the two of you, and to do it and have other people hear our convo is just even more of a gift. So it's been really cool.
Yeah, this is awesome. It's amazing how things have just like, when we first got together, like where we were in our journey with the Phoenix, and like how things have just changed, like I joke, and maybe this part doesn't get aired on the Phoenix, but I'm like, I do all this stuff I think should get me fired, but it gets me promoted. like it's wild, y'all. Like, how is this happening? But yeah, it's
because those things, those crazy ideas you have, those are actually really, really good ones, and they help.
And can't nobody come up with them but Caleb.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, nobody. Caleb is one of I know we're wrapping up here, but I just have to say this. Caleb's one of those people that I will have not talked to him for weeks and weeks and weeks. We work in separate areas, and even though we both live in the same city, it's we're a little bit of a ways away from each other, and I will suddenly get a message. I'll have like a day or like a couple days that are just like a little off, and I'll get a message from Caleb, and it's just like, just want you to know that you are a wonderful person, and I'm so glad that you're in my life, and just say all these things that it's like, how did you know that I needed to hear those things today? Like I haven't even talked to you in so long, and I don't know how you do it, Caleb, but keep bringing those ideas and doing the things. Listen to your gut, because it is always right.
Caleb and text Bryce every now and then too, man. What the hell?
Yeah, listen. So the thing is, Bryce, is that a lot of times I'm like, I'm getting ready to text you. I'm like, oh man, he's busy doing too many things. I don't want to interrupt.
We're checking on Liz. We're just checking on Liz. She probably needs
when you text Liz, just text Liz and then be like, and then tell Bryce I love him too.
Yeah, there you go. And then I'll CC. We'll CC Bryce.
Hit you with the dad joke and throw that out there.
Oh my gosh, the dad jokes. I love it. Well, we are going to wrap up, my friends.
Awesome.
I think our next, our kind of call to action here for everybody today is to reach out to somebody that you know and that you love, and tell them that you know them, that you love them, and they're doing a great job. Because I don't know a single person who that would not be powerful on this day and any day. And the other call to action that we'd ask of everyone, if you would be so kind, is to be sure you subscribe to the show if you haven't already. Wherever you listen to podcasts, just hit that subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. If you loved it and want to leave us a rating, leave us a review. Their words cannot express what a gift that is to us and how much that allows our podcast to find people who need it. And while you're at it, if you want to send this episode to someone that you care about, that would be lovely. And then talk to us. How can they talk to us?
They can talk to us on the Phoenix app. When they pop into the Phoenix app, they can hop in the Rise, Recover, Live podcast group. So the Phoenix app is cool. It allows for you to register for a program way quicker than you could just on a website. But it also has these groups on there. Plants of the Phoenix, pets of the Phoenix, and geographical location. So there's a Detroit group, there's a Tampa group, and there's also a podcast, the Rise, Recover, Live podcast group. Come in here and talk to us. We appreciate each and every one of you giving us feedback, letting us know what you enjoy about the show, letting us know what you would like to see more of, letting us know what you would like to see less of, and talk to us. We talk back. Love to continue to have this conversation on and off the air. So come holler at us on the Phoenix app and the Rise, Recover, Live podcast.
Cool. All right. Well, we did it, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you next time.
Great. Thank you both.
So now you're excited. Bryce, Liz, how do I get involved with the Phoenix? Well, my friend, it is super simple. We actually have an app. Head over to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, or look in the show notes of this podcast, wherever you're listening to or watching this podcast, and go download the Phoenix app.
The Phoenix app makes it so easy to find classes that are near you or to access our virtual class schedule where you can hop on from the comfort of your home. You can also join our groups and have a conversation with someone from the Phoenix community from anywhere in the world. Please make sure that you join the podcast group where you can connect with Bryce and I and other listeners. Everything that you need is in the show notes. You can also head to our website at www.thephoenix.org. And maybe while you're there, you click the volunteer tab and get even more involved.